Hey everyone, Joshua Gibson here, and you're listening to episode 52 of the Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast. Before we get started, I want to give a quick shout out to the show's sponsor, BarShield. BarShield created a maintenance kit designed to prevent rust and restore spin to a barbell's sleeves. My discount code, PWPodcast, will get you 10% off of your entire purchase. It will also help me to continue producing great podcasts with amazing guests. That discount code is PWPodcast, PWPODCAST, one word, will get you 10% off of your entire purchase. Head over to barshieldUSA.com, pick up a kit, and get your bars looking and spinning like new. That's it for the intro. Now let's get on to this week's podcast with Robbie Bourke. Welcome to the Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast. We are back again, this time with episode 52, and I'm joined today by Robbie Bourke. Robbie is the host of the All Things Strength and Wellness podcast, a podcast I've actually been following along with for over 100 episodes. Yeah, he's really put out that much content, and that's not to say it's watered down the quality because the guests get better and better every time. Robbie, how are we doing today?
As I said to you before we hopped on, absolutely fantastic, man. I woke up this morning, so that was a good start.
Yeah, and I'm curious because you've had a podcast where you've had on experts from so many different disciplines. It only seems appropriate that we've talked about how your views have changed since you've started the podcast. What are some of the biggest things you've learned, and what are some of the biggest mistakes you've made? But I guess we'll go with the first question. How have your views changed since episode 1 of the All Things Strength and Wellness podcast?
I would say it's not so much things change as they more so evolved. And I suppose the older I've gotten, and they say that you're supposed to gain more wisdom as you get older, but I suppose I see more common trends as I get older amongst a lot of the people who I've got on and been lucky enough to speak with on my podcast. I think one thing I'm constantly seeing is people who are masters of their craft. They're generalists. They're universalists. They see that, if you want to call it 30,000 square foot view, they always seem to have knowledge in so many different domains and an appreciation for so many different fields of knowledge. And they also seem to have a deep understanding of human psychology and behavior. And why I think that's important is it gives people a foundation of always asking the question why someone or something is the way they are for a reason, and coming to an awareness and appreciation that everyone and everything is the way they are for a reason. It allows you to develop greater compassion and empathy and understanding. And the field of epigenetics, you probably heard me speak about this if you've listened to some of my podcasts, is a field that I'm fascinated with, and it's an area of research that fundamentally changed my life and how I currently see and perceive reality in the world around me. So I've seen that among a lot of the guests that come on, that they're generous, they're universalists, they see that everything is one connected whole, nothing is in isolation, and that everyone and everything is the way they are, or the way it is for a reason, and that they show very, very high levels of wanting to understand, wanting to be curious and question why, and have high levels of compassion, empathy, understanding, and seem to just be decent human beings.
Yeah, and I'm always interested in providing ways for people to put these things into action. And I know most individuals will think, I need to specialize, so I need to read as much research as I can in the field that I've chosen about the certain development of strength or power or whatever. But for that person, what's your advice to help them develop a broader view of the picture? Like, how can they divide their time to different fields and different subjects? Because I know we all feel like we're pressed. So being able to kind of balance all of that is a skill in and of itself.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And how I have formulated this in my own mind and how I've spoken about it with fellow peers within the field is I see knowledge, the accumulation or the acquisition, I should say. I see knowledge acquisition no different than training. So in training, if we were to look at periodization, if we just took like the classical block model approach, or let's say we took the classical vertical integration where you emphasize a particular quality and you maintain the other qualities. That's how I see knowledge. So let's say you're a specialist within cancer, within weightlifting, within nutrition. You're a master chef, and you're telling me why do I need to know the general knowledge of physics or maths or biology? And we know that biology, chemistry, physics, maths, going back in that order, is what underpins the world and the universe around us. And I do not claim to have any deep knowledge in any one of those fields, but I'm just putting that out there. What I would say is treat it like, for the coaches, I'll speak in your language, treat it like periodization. Say you have an accumulation phase. Accumulation is GPP. It's general. We're touching all those, physical qualities and capacities. We're maintaining our strengths and we're working on our weaknesses. So maybe that's where you don't read as much in your own specialty field and you kind of explore more other domains. Then find an area within a domain that you're like, oh, this is really interesting. Then you go into intensification and intensify on it. And then realization then is where you put what you've learned into practice. So I see that's how I would see knowledge acquisition, the very same as a skill acquisition or the acquisition of a physical capacity. You have an accumulation phase where you accumulate knowledge of a general area you're trying to learn, intensify it so you become a little more specialized in it, and then apply what you did actually in your quote-unquote realization or tapering phase towards competition, if that's kind of making sense. And there now you've acquired knowledge from a general area that may add an extra dimension to your specialty. So the general knowledge is just a foundation to support your special knowledge. No different than GPP is a general foundation to support your SPP and then your actual sport or competition event.
Yeah, and I know as a specialist, we're able to critically appraise the information and kind of differentiate what's good and what's bad. But if we're going outside of our field, I see it as a little more difficult. But would you say that the general information that's out there for those basic fields of biology, physics, math is usually pretty spot on, and there's not a lot of appraising of the information that needs to take place? Or would you say that we still need to look at it and differentiate between what's good and what's bad?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So what I would always say, this came from Brian Walsh, and I was speaking actually with Brad Schoenfeld on my podcast last week. That still has to obviously be published, but because I'm like the slowest guy to put out podcasts. Literally, just podcasts that sit in my computer for anything. Some of them I sit up for 3 to 4 months sometimes, just because I get distracted and busy. But or laptops. I'm notorious enough for just laptops shitting in the bed. One day I'll buy one that will actually last more than a year. Anyway, first world problem, as I said, it's a privileged problem to have. But what I would say to there is, Brian Walsh says, you don't want to be closed-minded, you don't want to be open-minded, you want to be critically minded. Now, what Brad Schoenfeld said is, he says, be open-minded, but be skeptical at the same time. So yeah, you always want to keep a degree of, I don't even think is skeptibility or whatever, it's not even a word, but you always want to keep a critical analysis to your thinking and never take anything at face value, even if it is in a domain that you do not have a lot of knowledge of. What I will say is, though, going back to this concept of biology, which is underpinned by chemistry, which is underpinned by physics and maths, those processes are like first principles of how the universe around us works. So the more first principles you can learn, the more you can differentiate between basically good and bad, or BS essentially, when it comes to people making claims in almost any domain. Now, what I will say, when you are going to study an area that you are quote unquote not an expert, I never like that word expert, because it's like saying genius. It's like you can be a genius or an expert in a certain area of your life, but you could be completely redundant in another area. So like Einstein, obviously unbelievable with physics, but like I suppose if you sat down with Einstein and asked him about his exercise, nutrition, and sleep habits, you'd be like, you're getting a fucking big fat F on that, man. You are failing that miserably. But maybe he needed that imbalance to be so good at physics. You never know, So, but what I will say is, yeah, keep a critical mind, be skeptical, never take anything face value. Because the one message I always try to get across to anyone I ever interact with is, always try and think for yourself. Always have enough courage to come to your own conclusion. Never blindly accept what anyone ever tells you. So just always have enough courage to think for yourself is one thing. And I always say question what everyone says, and that includes me. I'm just another human being who has their own biases and frames of references, because obviously I've had experiences and conditions that have set how I'm currently seeing and perceiving reality and the way that I am portraying information. So I've got biases just like everyone else. What I will say though is if you are trying to accrue knowledge in a general area, and I'll wrap up this answer, is you know, I kind of have this formulation in my head. So if I'm looking at an area, I will look to the textbooks of that area first of all, get a general foundation in that area. Then I will look for who are perceived to be the top people in the field. Now, again, remember I said I don't like the word experts, but who are the perceived experts in the field? Go see their information. Do they have any information out there? Read it. If you find that it is good through your critical analysis and it makes sense, contact them or look for interviews with that person. YouTube, podcasts, great ways. Learn more about their work and it'll just start to formulate. A very good thing too also within a field is to look for contrast. Look to see if there is so if someone's claiming something in a domain, is there someone out there saying the complete opposite to them? And start to go through that process too, But that would be how I would say if you wanted to start acquiring knowledge in a general field and to kind of know if it is good or not so good. First, know your first principles. That will always help. Your bullshit detector will go up. Get textbooks in that area, read them, contact the perceived experts, study their work in depthly, but don't just study their work. Like, don't just look at one doctor in cancer. Look at a lot of doctors in cancer. Don't just look at one coach in track and field. Look at all the coaches in track and field. Like, if you were to only study, like, Clyde Hart, you'd train every 200-meter runner with a shit ton of volume, like you do with Michael Johnson. And then you'd meet someone like a Chris Corfus or a Tony Holler, and they're, like, couldn't be any more polar opposite to that in terms of the volumes they do. And then obviously Dan Fath has his system. And then Charlie Francis at his system, and then obviously if we went to weightlifting, if all you knew was the Bulgarian system, and you never looked into the Russian system, so always look to many different people within that same domain, and I think that will help you stimulate that knowledge acquisition. And to be honest, one of my mentors, and he'll hate calling me a mentor because he hates the concept of mentors, but James Smith the thinker, he always goes on about David Deutsch in that resources, and I'm not quoting the quote word for word, but essentially it's that resources aren't our problem. It's knowledge that is our problem. It's the fact that we don't have knowledge in a particular domain that limits us going forward and evolving more. So the more knowledge you can accrue, it just can't be a bad thing. But having first principles to help filter that knowledge, I think, is important. So first principles. Then if you want to go into a particular area, look at textbooks, look at perceived experts, read into their work, podcasts, interviews, and then contact them. There are people like me, how do you get these people on your show? I'm like, I email them. But see, the thing is, I don't email them like and go, hey, want to be on my podcast? I'd say, I've read your work. I found this, and this. So like, this guy has actually read my work first. Like, because I can remember one time I contacted Franz Bosch to interview on the podcast, and Franz was like, let's do it. And I said, Franz, I'm actually going to be honest, I haven't read your new book yet, and I'm not comfortable with bringing it on until I read it. And he wrote back and he says, read my book first. And he says, I appreciate the honesty. And then I got him on after I read it, and the interview was like one of the best. Like, everyone talks about that Franz Bosch episode. I was like that's one I got one of the most feedback on. But yeah, so that's how I would go about that in terms of like trying to acquire knowledge and know if it's, as you were saying, like, how do I know if this is true or not true or good or not bad if I'm not like someone who's more specialized in this field? That would help. First principles, textbooks within that area, perceived experts, read many of the experts in the field, contact them, converse with them, and then you'll start to formulate a pretty good idea within that field.
Okay, so obviously we see a natural progression here. So once we've acquired the knowledge, the question becomes, how do we put that into practice? And then how do we put that into practice in a logical way that limits the negative outcomes and moves us more towards like positive outcomes? Because obviously these systems have been developed through trial and error, but what's the way we can minimize error and maximize our results?
Well, the only way really, I can't say only way, but in my mind, it's just test and retest. You have to have some objective baseline and then to retest. So it is data collection and just test, retest, trying to be as objective as possible. Now, obviously, as humans, we're not objective. We can never be objective. And this is the thing with science. I'm going to say this, science is not objective. The scientific method is meant to be objective, and it is if it's done correctly. But science can never be objective because we're the people who conduct it, and we're also people then that observe the results. And we know that me and you could look at the same scientific experiment and perceive it differently in terms of its results. Humans have emotions, humans have subjectivity, and as much as we try to be as objective as possible, we have biases and we have subconscious belief systems that will always have a tint or a hint of subjectivity within science and the scientific method. And we know that once you go into the field of quantum, that it's all about probability and statistics. That's why with statistics, it's all about p-values. And well, we're 95% sure that this is definite, but there is a chance we could be wrong. So it's probability. So like James on my last podcast said, we should never ask the question, are you certain? It should be, are you certain that this is the most probable outcome, is what we really should say. And James would say that in his very sort of stoic type, almost broken Russian type translated English. But yeah, it's trial and error is a way, but test and retest. That is to me that's nearly like if you were to take a sheet of paper and write down like sort of universal principles, things like contrast would come on it, 80-20 would come on it, test retest would be on it. You know what I mean? Yin yang would be on it. If you're to write hot and cold, man, woman, like that be contrast really. But like these certain principles that would just kind of flow out of me in terms of so that would be one in terms of a test retest.
Yeah, and after listening to a lot of your podcasts, I kind of got interested in John Kiley's work, and I've been looking at like his discussion of periodization and our views of it. And the one thing that always comes to mind when I'm reading that is you talking about humans being like dynamic biological systems. So as a coach, how do we create tests with these dynamic biological systems that can give us an accurate outcome where we know what we're looking for, right? Because there's going to be a lot of noise there. When we create a test, we don't know what's providing the result. So how do we control for these different variables to make sure what we're testing and what the outcome is what we actually want to find?
Well, I don't think you can. So like this, I think John's work is misinterpreted sometimes. I'm not saying you're misinterpreting it, but like it's like when we set calories. Your calories are not going to be 100%. They are a guideline. Like they'll give you this bandwidth to work from, and because humans are dynamic organisms, we can have bandwidths and ranges to work within. So like we just cannot predict with 100% certainty that this is the exact outcome this individual is going to get if I apply this training stimulus. You just can't. Now, do we have a global idea of what will happen? Yeah, if I do strength training, you will get stronger. How much stronger? I don't know. What specific type of method of loading or strength methodology is best for you right now? I don't know. But I know that you will get stronger. You should get stronger. Now, obviously, the more you become qualified and the higher level of mastery in your field, we could get into all that conversation. How much transfer does max strength have? Blah, blah, blah. I'm not talking about that. But I know that if I apply a certain stimulus, you should get a certain response. How much of a response? I don't know. That's where the bandwidth and the dynamic flux of a biological organism comes into play. That's where that noise comes into play. And we can't control that. We can control it as much as we can, but we just can't. Particularly with humans, because even if you try to control every external variable on top of a person, they could just have a thought, which is an internal variable, and it's just like, well, that's even changed. Like John's spoken about how emotions can actually change an adaptation to a physiological stimulus. But see, people then perceive that John is like, well, then there's no need to have any planning. There's no need to, and John's like periodization, programming, planning, organization, whatever the fuck you want to call it. You do need to have a plan and a template, but within that, you understand that the individual or individuals in front of you are dynamic biological systems that are in constant flux all the time, and they're not going to meet certain timelines or adaptations 100% spot on to the letter of the law. It's just not going to happen. But will they be in a general bandwidth of adaptations from an exposure to a particular demand? Yes. I mean, I think that's pretty well proven at this stage in terms of even just like, okay, I'm going to say, observation. No, I said it, a subjective measure. But we know too within studies too, you do strength training, you will get stronger up to a certain point, and then there's a diminishing return depending on your sport, unless your sport is powerlifting. But then there is a diminishing return too, but you will still get stronger as the year goes on, but just it'll get smaller and smaller and smaller as your career goes on. Same with a power stimulus, a speed stimulus. skill acquisition, all that type of stuff. But there is dynamic flux built into that bandwidth that needs to be taken. So look, planning, organization, very important. But like, can you predict something 100% with a human being? No. You need to understand that there needs to be fluidity, contingency plans, and then just understanding that the human organism is dynamic and it's always in flux, and it's not gonna stick to your regimented plan like a machine or a robot could, because again of the dynamic nature of the human. I hope that made sense, that answer.
No, that made a lot of sense. And I've noticed, just talking with my athletes in particular, if you don't educate them on the need to be flexible within a training plan, they see it as this rigid template that they have to hit these numbers. And if they don't, like, everything's gone to shit, basically. So for the coaches listening, how can you, or even athletes that do their own programming, how can you put that flexibility into a plan so that when someone looks at it, there's more leeway there? So like, I know Mike Teixeira's talked about RPE, and then you have percent ranges, but what's your preferred approach? Because the Greg Half program podcast I listened to, he talked about RPE as not being an effective measure within training because people will tend to push themselves too hard or not hard enough. I'm curious to hear your approach on that.
So what I'll say, RPE is great, and Mike will tell you this himself. It depends again on the individual. So it does need to be someone, if we want to put it in beginner, intermediate, advanced, usually it only works well when you get to that intermediate and up to advanced stage, because you're obviously more attuned to your body and you know what heavy loads feel like, or what particular loads feel like. In terms of reps in reserve, intermediate to advanced are far more accurate than a beginner, because again, a beginner just hasn't built up enough training knowledge to really be able to say, I think I had 2 reps left, or I think I had 3 reps left. But I do think RPE can be one. I think, again, the more objective you can be, the better. Simple as that. So HRV, I think that's one way you could go about it. I think monitoring your bar speed is another way you go about it, because if you're monitoring bar speed and something that you move at 1 meters per second is moving at 1.8 today, something's not right. And what I like about that is the GymAware or whatever you're using doesn't know you, has no emotional attachment to you. It's purely subjective. Because if a coach says to Natalie, I think you should lighten up today, there is a perception there, you know what I mean? Whereas that little boxing machine doesn't know you, knows nothing about you, has no emotions. That's stone cold objective data coming back right there. So I think monitoring for someone like weightlifting, bar speed, HRV for a general athlete, I think is great. Like, people can argue about like the algorithms and like, well, how much information can you get from a 1 minute HRV test? Hey, it's better than nothing. Okay, so I think if you marry subjective things like RPE with HRV, with tracking bar speed, I think you have something there. Is it the be-all and end-all? Could holes be picked in all 3 of those methods? Of course. But give me a solution. What's your solution? It's like, yeah. You probably heard me defend the FMS a million times, and I've stopped at this stage because like people must think like I'm some sort of fucking fundamental FMS Christian almost. You know what I mean? Like, great cook says the word. It's not that at all. Like, and I always said this, it's like the subject could be history, religion, politics, organic farming. It's just that when people base criticisms off false assumptions, first of all, and then also when they have a criticism of something and they don't offer a solution, I'm like, what are you adding to the universe here? You know what I mean? But again, now, go back to my very first answer of the trends I saw in people. Go back to try and ask, why is this person the way they are? Try to understand and have empathy for them. And a lot of times people just criticize or complain because they're filling a void in their life, Joshua. And that void is they don't know what to do with their lives. When you don't know what to do, you've no self-worth. When you have no self-worth, how do you fill that void? Well, if I make a complaint and I make a good point, that makes me feel a little bit better, gives me a little bit of dopamine release, and I feel like I'm worthy of my presence on Earth. But then, like when you say, give me a solution, they've got on to back it up, and then they get emotional again. They're like, oh, and it ends up in arguments usually, you know. But so, going back to that, RPE, I think, is very good. Patrick Ward at Seattle Seahawks, he actually says there's papers out on actually that it is a pretty reliable indicator of how true someone is feeling. I don't know. He's well more open to that research than I am. But I think if you can marry subjective markers with objective markers, I think that's great. I think at this stage, HRV is so accessible to people. I don't know why you wouldn't do it. I did it for 18 months. I found it very, very good. I found it always correlated with how I felt. It actually showed me that I completely undertrained because I was always nearly coming up green, and I was just like, I just don't train hard enough. It's as simple as that. But see, and at the same time though, I have very low stress in my life, and I sleep great, and I eat, I eat food, which most people don't. What do you eat? I eat food. Yeah, I shred it sometimes. So I'd say something like HRV, if you have something to track your bar speed, I think it's great. Dan Baker's a good man to talk about that. Even though I know Mladen Janovic has come out with some issues with velocity-based training. Mladen is way fucking smarter than me, so I'll let him sell that boat. And NRP. So if you can marry those three things up, I think it'd be very good in terms of if we're talking about performance in a weight room. Like, well, HRV covers all. It's that's health and wellness. That's just like performance. I mean, you could track bar speed too for an athlete just using weight room work as GPP work too, to give an indication for that day. But I think those things are good. I think a very good person to speak about this is Devin McConnell, who's at UMass Lowell Hockey. He's done a lot in monitoring now. And another thing too is it's kind of like having something to look at each system. So like the reactive strength index or a broad jump or vertical jump gives you some indication to CNS. Now, some people come out and said, does CNS fatigue even exist, or what is that? You know what I mean? Usually people say it's a window into brain and spinal cord output and stuff like that, whereas, you have other measures of other things. Like, obviously, HRV is your autonomic nervous system measure. A vertical jump or a reactive jump index could be your CNS measure. And then your RP is your subjective measure. And then your bar speed then is giving you more sort of indication to probably global CNS fatigue as well. Like, they'd be things that I'd be looking at. They would probably be the four things. So an RP is subjective, a HRV, a bar speed, and a reactive strength index. If I had reactive strength index data already on a group of athletes or an athlete, they'd probably be things I'd be looking at a daily or 2 or 3 times a week type basis.
Okay. And on this podcast, we have not discussed HRV at all. So I think this is a great opportunity for you, Robbie, to give us an idea of what heart rate variability is, what it measures, which apps we can go towards that are going to provide us with the best or the more accurate information, and then how we can implement it into our daily lives and then training. Sweet.
So first thing I'll say is I'm no expert in HRV. I can just give you what I've currently learned so far, and I haven't looked at all the apps either. I've used 2. One wasn't an app, one's a machine, but I've only used one app. But anyway, so to explain HRV, from my study knowledge, it originally came from the Russian cosmonauts, and it was a way to look at basically the detriments of space travel. And they wanted to see basically how devastating going into space was, and when they came back to Earth, and what sort of impact that had on the regulatory systems of the body. Okay, so they use HRV as a window into this. So HRV, heart rate variability, is a measure of the variability between one heartbeat to the next. So it looks at that in milliseconds. Okay, and the more variability there is they're called OR peaks or OR intervals, like one heartbeat to the next. They look at the OR peak or the OR interval on the electrocardiogram. The more variability there is between one beat to the next, that means there's more parasympathetic tone in the system. So your autonomic nervous system has your sympathetic branch, your parasympathetic branch. Sympathetic, fight or flight, where you're going to fight, or you're going to flight, or you're going to freeze, or fornicates in 1 2 because it helps with ejaculation. So it actually has 4 Fs. Then you have rest and digest, parasympathetic. So the heart is regulated by the autonomic nervous system. So if you have lots of variability between the heartbeats and your heart rate is generally in the lower side, that's more indication you're more in a parasympathetic state. For the most part, and I'll get to this a little bit later in the answer, that's a good state to be in. That means you're more adaptable, and the more adaptable you are, the more stress you're able to cope with, which is a good thing. Being more adaptable is what we want. However, if your heart rate was higher and your beats are not variable, so the time intervals between them are actually very static and stable. So let's say they were coming at like a 900 milliseconds, like you were getting like 900, like 889, 901, 877, 90, 915, 905. They're very close in bandwidth, whereas the ones that would be out very wide, they'd be like 1420, 1200, 1521, 1100. There'd be way more just differences in times in terms of the milliseconds. So if the heart rate's more stable and the intervals are narrower, that means you're in a more sympathetic mode, which means you're less adaptable, and your adaptability to stress has decreased. Not a good thing. Okay. Now this can be acutely or chronically. Now acutely, that's going to happen after like a heavy session. Your adaptability is obviously going to be down until you recover. But people can be in these states chronically. That's not when we're good. Okay. So the technology came from the Russian cosmonaut program, just to look at the devastation that space travel had on the autonomic nervous system. You can kind of indirectly indicate how someone's mitochondria is functioning. So I did mitochondrial medicine course, and they use HRV to get an indirect measure of how somebody was making cellular energy at the mitochondrial level. So again, if HRV was all over the place and not good, chances are you were not making ATP well in your mitochondria, which is not a good thing, because mitochondria are the key to basically health. Mitochondrial health is going to be the next big thing. Like epigenetics was the last, the kind of big thing there for the last decade or so. Like mitochondrial medicine is going to be huge, because nearly every chronic degenerative disease is underpinned by mitochondrial dysfunction, inflammation, mitochondrial dysfunction. Because that's where you're going to make energy, Joshua. Electron transport chain, you get hydrogen and then attached to oxygen, and then it turns into water molecule, etc. But it filtered into sport then over the last 10 years or so, HRV. So basically, the apps that have come out have been iAthletes one, Omega Wave is another. Omega Wave came out with an actual system that cost like $35,000 at the time, where you hook people up to all these electrodes and stuff, and like professional teams started to get them in, and they'd bring their players through 5-minute tests every day. Bioforce with Joel Jason is the one I used. That was a 2.5-minute one. And that's been out like 8 years, but it's been updated multiple times since. So it used to be a heart rate strap with a receiver in your phone. Now it's just like a finger monitor, I think, or it could be a strap even around the wrist, because they brought out a new thing called Morpheus, which looks at HRV. But anyway, HRV then, knowing if you're in more of a parasympathetic or sympathetic state, it'll tell you where you are from a readiness standpoint at that very moment in time to be able to adapt to stress for that day. Now, there are some criticisms in that I could take my HRV now and take it later on in the day and it'll change. Yes, because you're an adaptive organism. Of course it's going to change. Hence why it's called heart rate variability. But if you can be consistent at the same time of day that you take it, like when we take weight and stuff like that, and this is the key thing, you need to get a trend. You need to build up a base of data on HRV. You can't, if you just sent me one reading on HRV, that means absolutely nothing. Because you can send me your HRV score after a session, and it could look awful as one snapshot. Like you're sympathetic as fuck, your heart rate's up. It's like, oh, this fella, like, it looks like he's going to die if this is his state all the time. No, this is just like 5 minutes after training. Whereas you show me in the morning and you're well recovered, it's like, oh, this person is in a good state. They're parasympathetic, heart rate is low, etc. So you need to build up a baseline of your HRV to get a trend, and then off that we can start making inferences of what's good and not so good for this particular individual. So HRV came from the Russian cosmonaut program, basically to monitor the devastation of space travel on the autonomic nervous system, the regulatory systems of the body. Just an interesting fact there, apparently 1 year in space is 10 years on Earth. Reasons for that is you're closer to the ionic radiation of the sun, so it speeds up oxidative stress at a cellular level. So you're basically at a cellular level, you're aging faster, much, much faster. And obviously you're away from gravitational pull of the Earth too, which is also very important for things like bone health. That's why osteoporosis is a huge thing with astronauts, and why they're trying to get like gyms and shit up onto the space stations. Well, they have them, but they're trying to get like better equipment to help load the skeletal muscular system in space to keep it healthy. So it came from the Russian cosmonaut program, looks at autonomic nervous system, tells if someone is more sympathetic or parasympathetic, got into sports then as a way to look at everyone's daily readiness, and also gave people a window or a snapshot into how people were adapting to all stresses in their life. And this is the key thing. HRV is not, it won't tell you have this as a diagnosis, like it won't give you any diagnosis, like if it's looking at more of a clinical health thing, and it won't say like, you're fatigued from this part of your training. It just gives you a global snapshot. It's like, you're ready to adapt to stress today, you're not ready to adapt to stress today, one or the other. Apps, as I said, you have iAthlete, Omega Wave, Bioforce. There's a few other ones, but they're the three ones that I've come across, and I've used Bioforce. I have a unit that I bought with a friend of mine when we went through a mitochondrial medicine course. That's a different thing altogether. One thing I just want to say before I wrap up is people think that parasympathetic is really, really good and sympathetic is very, very bad. That's incorrect. Sympathetic in small acute doses is excellent. Chronic parasympathetic tone is very bad. That's actually the worst condition to be in. That's worse than being in a hypersympathetic state. If you're in a hyper parasympathetic state, like chronically parasympathetic, these are the people that stand up and they faint because they are so sympathetically fatigued that they can't even produce enough. They can't mobilize enough energy from their HPA axis, their hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, that they can't even get like enough tension in enough tension in their vessels to get blood up to their brain quick enough. Like their baroreceptors, they're basically their information going back to the brain is off, but like they're not sensing enough pressure in the vessels because the vessels just can't contract. So baroreceptors are what detect pressure in your vessels, and if they're not like if they're not sensing, or if the vessels can't contract hard enough, they're not going to be able to send and relay information to the brain that, okay, we need to, this person standing up, we need to actually like contract or get the vessels to constrict, to pump the blood up to the brain. So there's a whole issue with that then as well. So overly parasympathetic is also not a good thing. That's an other type of overtraining syndrome. So you can get sympathetic overtraining, parasympathetic overtraining. Parasympathetic is very detrimental. So it is. That's where someone has like chronic low heart rate. They're fatigued. They're cold all the time. No bowel movements. Just tired all the time. That's a hard state to come out of. But you see that a lot in general population people, and this is the difference. High parasympathetic tone athletes is generally a good thing as long as they're not having any of these like other symptoms, like they're like really fatigued, heart rate's wickedly low. They're not motivated. Just it's those things are, if they're just like an athlete who's in a general healthy condition, that should be generally their resting state all the time. And the reason for that is because they're so well trained that like daily life in terms of physiological load should be easy to them. Like, walking around. That's why we have lower resting heart rates, because like sitting and walking upstairs or daily life activity should be no problem to us when we like do like, like we lift heavy weights and we do like intervals, and do you know what I mean? So that's why our resting state should be pretty healthy. But if you have a general population person who does nothing, I mean no exercise, nothing like that, and they're chronically in a parasympathetic state, that's generally someone who's in a very poor condition. Like that's the person there they're probably being stressed all their fucking lives. Their HPA axis is just blown out, and now they're in what seems to be a chronic parasympathetic state. So that's just something to be very aware of. So that's HRV in a very long-winded answer, like I always go off on. You're being very good and patient with me there. But that's where it came from. The Russian Cosmonaut program looks at your autonomic nervous system, which gives you a window into how adaptable you are on a moment-to-moment basis, basically to see how much adaptive reserve you have in your system to cope and adapt to all stresses. And this is like physical stress, psychological stress, emotional stress, all types of stress. And your body can't differentiate between a physical stress and an emotional stress. So it just tells you where you are from a readiness basis. You need to collect the data to get a trend line before you can start utilizing the information. And being overly parasympathetic can be just as bad as being overly sympathetic from a HRV standpoint. So they're just key things to remember. And apps, Bioforce, iAthlete, Omega Wave are the only ones I've really looked into, and Bioforce is the only one I've actually used. But there are way more ones out there now, so look into those.
Yeah, and that's an incredibly thorough answer, and I think it's a great jumping off point for anyone that's interested in using that in monitoring their adaptability to training stress. So if we're talking about stress and we're looking at how our daily lives can influence our ability to adapt to training stress, you talked about sleep and nutrition earlier, and your podcast is all things strength and wellness, so I'd like to tap into that wellness piece. As far as nutrition and sleep goes, what are your general recommendations for obviously being able to optimize performance through sleep and being able to optimize health through nutrition? I know that's like a very broad question, but
no, it's great.
Yeah, you have a really uncanny ability to take a broad question and answer it really well. So I like to see you run with that.
Well, I think it's just because I'm at a stage where, like, the person who came into my head there was Dan Pfaff, and Dan Pfaff has this thing, is like, you should have a model for everything. So, so I have a model for sleep optimization. I have a model for nutrition. I have a model for athletic development. But these things I've acquired over time. Like, when I first got into the field, like, you know nothing, but then you get that little bit of knowledge, like, oh, I know everything. And then, like, the more you learn, you're like, I know fucking nothing, I'm lost. Which is where I still am to this day. But in terms of sleep and nutrition, I mean, I'm not going to tell you anything that you probably haven't heard in other resources or some people listening to this. I mean, like circadian rhythm, circadian biology is just an area I absolutely love. Now, have I studied it to the 8th degree. No, not yet. And it is an area I want to delve into more. There's other experts out there: Dan Pardy, Kurt Parsley, Matthew Walker, whose book I read lately was fantastic. But sleep, it's so I have such little frame of reference for other people. Like when people tell me how much they struggle to sleep, I'm just like,
yeah.
Like so many people I know, they have insomnia, they don't sleep. I'm just like I literally I go to bed, I'm gone till I wake up the next morning, and that's the way it's been for the last 8 years or so since I started studying circadian rhythms. But my model for sleep, the first thing I say to people is, you need to build a sleep routine. Like, do you have a routine? So, I think the simplest way to get this to people is whatever time you'd like to go to whatever time you'd like to be asleep at. So let's say, for whatever reason, you're like, I'd like to be able to sleep 8 hours. Let's just say 8, just to make it easy. And you got to get up at 6. So, okay, you want to be asleep at roughly 10 o'clock. Okay. At 9 p.m., that is your ready-to-go bedtime. Turn off your phone, turn off your iPad, as hard as it may be, and have a wind-down hour. Do what you love to do there, as long as it's not on your phone. People go, it's Facebook and all. Try and go journaling, reading, meditating, shower, light housework in a dim light living, whatever it is. For me, it's reading or listening to music or studying. It's usually reading and studying. But have some type of preparation period. I think it's very helpful. The things that we can talk about, dark room, black as possible, blackout curtains, no electronics, cool room to help with body temperature, take a warm shower or bath, because this is funny. People used to keep saying have a cold shower because you want to be cold going to bed. And I was always having warm showers and always felt perfect for bed. And then I found out from Matthew Walker, was like, no, you don't want a cold shower before you go to bed. That's sympathetic, you fucking idiots. Because that also never made sense to me either. Cold shower makes you're like, I'm awake. Whereas, warm, I also have a cold shower in the morning because warm things put me asleep. I don't know how someone feels refreshed after a warm shower first thing in the morning. It makes me drowsy. I also have a cold shower and I'm like, woof, ready to go. But I also have a warm shower before I go to bed. And Matthew Walker says, because when you have a warm shower, and then you get out, your body starts to have to cool itself. It starts to drag temperature starts to leave out through your periphery, so your core temperature actually drops after a warm shower. I was like, that's why I feel really sleepy when I get to bed. But have an hour routine. Do something that's very calm in there. We all know about the lights. Get your fucking artificial lights off. All right, if you want to be on a phone, an iPad, right, or a computer, get Flux on your computer or whatever takes the blue light out of your computer. Get blue blocking glasses. They don't cost much. Cover your skin up as much as you can. Your skin picks up light, so wear some type of clothing where most of your skin is covered up if you're going to be around bright light. But then when you're going to bed, have a routine. Have it black, have it cool, no electronics on, and just go to bed. So just a dark room, cool room, all that stuff. Artificial light's a disaster. We all if you want, I don't know if you want me to get into that. You want blue. It's like the sympathetic versus parasympathetic. It's not that one is good or bad. It's just all about context. Blue light is fucking really important first thing in the morning. Super important. It regulates your circadian clock. So that's why getting out first thing in the morning in real sunlight is very, very important. Now, if you're in somewhere in the winter like I am here in Ireland, you just that walk in the morning has to happen a little bit later, or else get some blue light on. That's when turning lights on in your house is actually a good thing for seeing. Even though the power of the flux is nowhere near the power of the flux you'll get off the sun. So sunlight's way more powerful, even on an overcast day, than a light bulb could ever give. And in terms of circadian regulation, that's far superior. So blue light exposure first thing in the morning is really important. That'll actually help your sleep later at night because it'll start to build up appropriate sleep pressure. So getting outside first thing in the morning is really, really important. Blue light exposure, it raises a hormone called cortisol, which gets you going for the day. As the day goes on and progresses, the spectrum of light throughout the sun will change. Blue is strongest in the morning. It goes through all the spectrums of light. So if people don't understand anything by spectrum of light, think of a rainbow. The sun gives off a spectrum of light like that. We just don't see it with our naked eye. but the clock in our brain detects that. So we have a thing in our brain called our suprachiasmatic nucleus, which relays information to the pineal gland. And the pineal gland's job is to say, hey, do I release melatonin? Do I not release melatonin? Melatonin is a hormone you want high at night. It makes you sleepy. It's a very important antioxidant. And what destroys melatonin in terms of its production from the pineal gland is blue light. So we do not want to be around artificial light that gives off a blue light spectrum at nighttime, which is our iPads, iPhones, laptops, all that type of stuff. Now, if you do need beyond that, as I just said to Joshua, get a pair of blue light blocking glasses, rose or yellow tinted. Rose is probably better because that's more sunset type stuff. Wear clothing, so you're trying to cover up as much skin as you can because your skin picks up light as well. Not to the same degree as through your eye or your retinas, but it still picks it up. And then obviously, as I said, when you're going to bed, build up a routine. Have that hour, at least a half an hour for a routine where it's all dim lights. I advise people get candles. People laugh at that, like, oh, candles, you can't see a thing. I'm like, have you ever actually had 2 to 3 large candles on the room? The room's fucking like illuminous. It's well bright. It's just that people don't see candles anymore. They're so used to light. So get candles, read a book, journal, breathe, stretch, do something, get into some type of mindfulness. I think everyone got into some sort of mindfulness. I think everyone thinks that when they hear the word meditation, mindfulness, they always think of the Zen Buddha who has his legs crossed and he's going, It's like, that's not meditation or mindfulness. It can be from loads of things. Like, even go for a walk. Because, okay, it's dark outside, okay, there's artificial lights outside, but if you go for a walk and you have a hoodie on and glasses, your blue light glasses on, you're not going to get that much artificial light in the top of your body or skin. You can go for a light walk around your neighborhood and then start to wind down. That's what you want to do as well, clear your head. So get some type of routine that winds you down. And then for bed, dark room, cool room, get all your fucking electronics off. Buy an alarm clock. Don't keep your phone on. Turn your phone off, for the love of Jesus. I don't know why people have to keep their phone on. In case someone rings, it's just like, what? 3 in the morning. Like, someone's ringing at 3 in the morning. They're going to get an absolute bollocking out of, what the fuck you doing ringing me this early morning? Anyway, your phone should be off. Obviously, if there's an accident or something, but anyway. So, cool room, dark room, no artificial lights going to bed, have a routine. AM sunlight's really important. Blue light in the morning, very important. Blue light at night, absolute disaster. And then just try and make your house as dim as possible at night. Blue light blockers, all that type of good stuff. So that would be my advice to people. Now, obviously, when you get people who've got sleep conditions or struggle with sleep, you got to just integrate that stuff slowly. You know what I mean? Very slowly after time. There's certain other things you can do to help with that, like timing of their meals. So, like, if you get someone who just eats monster at nighttime and that puts their bedtime off to 12 or 1 in the morning, you might have to say to them, listen, just don't. I need you to fast till breakfast. I need you to reset your appetite here, and then that can start to reset their clock a little bit. Now, another thing too is there are things called chronotypes, but people bring that to the 8th degree. Oh, well, I'm an L, so I go to bed at 2 and I get up at whatever. It's like, no, the chronotypes aren't that far apart. Like, a lark is someone who goes to bed at 9 to 10 p.m. A lark. And an owl is someone who goes 11 at midnight maybe. It's not this I go at 4 a.m. because I'm an owl. It's like, it's not that fucking black and white now, so it's not. But I'm rambling a bit there, but I hope that helps us really. So have a routine at night. And actually, a really good book is by a guy called Nick Littlehales. Sleep, it's called. It's basically it. And he just has a lot of really good practical information in that book. Whereas Matthew Walker's book is a lot more on the science side, even though he does give some practical tips. But have a sleep routine. So an hour, at least half an hour, have a wind down period. Dark room, as I said, no artificial light, black it out, have it cool. And then in the morning time, get out, try and get some light on your skin, real light, because that will help with your sleep at night. And then other things like your meals, try and regulate your meals as well. Again, we could talk, it depends, it just needs context here, because you're an athlete, it's very different. If you're just a general population person looking for just general health and wellness, try to have, fairly scheduled meals, I even hate saying breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but a meal 1, meal 2, meal 3, because there is circadian regulation with your meals as well. They're more peripheral regulators than central, which would be light and temperature. So blue light in the morning, regulate your meals. Exercise is another important thing. If you exercise a little bit earlier in the day, the they'll all help with sleep and sleep pressure and make you want to go to sleep. So I hope that helps to a certain degree.
No, that was a phenomenal answer, and I think one of the problems that I've noticed that people run into is they feel doomed to whatever the situation they're in. So if they can't sleep, and that's consistently reoccurring every night, they feel kind of doomed to be in that situation for the rest of time. It's like, oh, this is just who I am.
Yeah.
This is how my body functions. But there are so many things that you can control and change, and I think once you start educating yourself, as you have, Robbie, and hopefully our listeners have, you realize like, you can control a lot of shit that influences how your body functions and performs, in terms of sleep, and in terms of like how rested and fatigued you feel. There's so many different influences, and I know you are really interested in epigenetics. So maybe if you can explain that, we can start diving into that side of the discussion.
Yeah, I never answered your nutrition question either. So
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, sorry, I went off on the sleep one there. Just with nutrition, and I'll try and make it a little more concise because I can get rambly because I repeat myself over and over. It's early dementia. Yeah, that's what I have. It's my life. But with the nutrition, what I would say is pick up Eric Helms's book, the Muscle and Strength Pyramid books. So he's the training manual, nutrition manual, and the hierarchy in that is like that's all you need to know. Really, that is all you need to know. In terms of, again, let's go back to principles versus methods. Paleo is a method. Vegan, method. Keto is a method. Atkins, method. They're all different methods, but the principles that underlie their success is going to be all the same. So we have that pyramid for nutrition, the hierarchy. If we're talking purely body composition here, the most important things for body composition will be energy in, energy out. And this is where people get confused, because people go, well, I heard calories and calories as bollocks because we're open chain dynamic organisms. And it's like, that is true. That is true. But this is the simple fact of the matter. If you are dropping weight, this means you are in an energy deficit. That is undeniable. Why you are in an energy deficit, we don't know. If you're not so if somebody is losing weight or gaining weight and they're not intentionally meaning to eat in a deficit or a surplus, we don't know the mechanism of why that's happening, but it's undeniable that if you're dropping weight, you're in a deficit, and if you're gaining, you're in a surplus. Like, that's undeniable. But it's people then want to say, well, what's the because you hear people say, oh, well, I put this girl on 1,500 calories and she was gaining, or she was gaining weight, or like I put her on 1,000 calories and she was gaining weight. Okay, a few things there. First of all, if she wasn't lying, which is highly unlikely, she's just completely misreporting. Let's say she was, well then mechanistically there is something so fucked up with her system from a regulatory standpoint that 1,000 calories is actually putting her in a surplus. Like, there's something so fundamentally wrong, hormonally, biochemically, whatever it is. Like, there's just something completely off with the whole regulation of her system. But that still doesn't deny then that she is not in a deficit. Do you see what I'm saying? This is where, like, people want to. So people are like, it's calories in, calories out, and people go, no, it's all about hormones and chemistry. Calories in, calories bollocks, because I put we could go down a whole rabbit hole on that. Yeah, it's just that simple fact of the matter is, if your weight is going down, you are in a deficit. If it's going up, you are in a surplus. Okay, and if you're not intentionally meaning to lose weight or gain weight, well, then we don't know why that is happening mechanistically. We can say, well, it could be leptin and insulin and hormones. Yeah, that could be all great. But it still doesn't deny the fact that there's an energy deficit going on if you're dropping, or an energy surplus if you're gaining. Like, that's just fact. But Eric Helms's book, okay, if we're talking about body composition, energy and energy out is the most important thing. Then your macronutrient breakdown is more important. Now, some people will say that energy and energy out dictates your body weight. The macro ratios dictates your body composition. So, a lot of people will say that. So that, again, because you can gain muscle and lose weight. So your weight can go down, but your muscle to fat mass can improve. You can gain more muscle and your fat can go down. So you can lose weight and gain more muscle. Like, would you optimize your muscle gain? No. But your body composition can change for the better. And vice versa too. So, like, you can obviously gain weight, and obviously your fat to mass ratio can kind of get worse. But you can definitely gain muscle in a deficit as long as there's enough protein around. So a lot of people say that energy and energy out dictates global body weight. The macronutrients and the ratios will dictate more of the body composition. This is where some people, they seem to do better with more fat to carb ratio. Other people might do more better to carb to fat ratio. And then even within people, there's times in their lives where they might thrive on one macronutrient ratio, and then they won't, and then they'll need to go to another one. Same with food types. But anyway, energy and energy out number one, macronutrient, protein, fats, carbs next. If we're going to look at setting those, protein would be number one. If you're an athlete, we're looking at 1 gram per pound of body weight. In more of the European countries, we're talking about 2 grams per kilo of body weight. After that, then you set up your fats and carbs whatever way you want, depending on your demands and activity and stuff like that. So, if you're highly glycolytic, like a CrossFitter, you are going to need a lot more carbs, more than likely. If you're just an average Joe, first of all, you probably don't even need that amount of protein if you're just an average Joe. But anyway, let's just say we did set it to that. You're an active average Joe. How you set your carbs and fats has been shown to not really have any huge statistical impact on body composition. I think Kevin Hall is researching that. Danny Lennon will let you know on that. After that, then you have your micronutrient content, so your vitamins, carbs, water, and fiber intake. After that, then is your timing and frequency, and then after that, supplements. So if we were looking at a hierarchy, what is most important in terms of body composition? And now let's just say that we're eating quality food here. So for body composition and overall health, this is the order we want to go in. Energy and energy out. Macros, micros, timing and frequency, supplements. Now that's an under assumption that you're eating the highest quality food as well that you can get. People go, if you can get organic, yeah, that's great. If you can't, well then just get the conventional. It's kind of on a spectrum here, okay? I think most people just you get these people they're like, get organic food, and Ben House talks about this, get organic food, blah, blah, blah. And it's just yeah, but if they still don't understand portion sizes and macros, I mean, they can still I was fat and all I ate was real food because I ate too much of the fucking thing. So you still need to have an idea of portion sizes and energy out, macronutrient breakdowns, as well as the food composition and quality. Now I know, so that's Eric's hierarchy, and I like that, and I always say it with the premise that this is also the premise. So if it's for body composition and health, you're eating the best quality food because you can get really good body composition and eat shit. Mm-hmm. That's why If It Fits Your Macros works. Now, If It Fits Your Macros has two main detriments that come straight to my mind. One, you're going to be more hungry because shit food doesn't fill you up as much as real food does. And second of all, you're going to miss out on a shit ton of micronutrition, which is very, very important. So in the long run, that shit's going to catch up with you. I don't give a fuck whatever way you rub it. Now, if you look at Renaissance periodization, they have a very similar pyramid to Eric's, but they have one purely for body comp and one for health, and they switch around the importance in the hierarchy. Their body comp one is energy in, energy out, macronutrient intake, timing, frequency. Food quality then is up near the top, so they don't really. That's why If It Fits Your Macros works for just body comp goals. Not talking health here, people. And then supplements is the least important. Okay. Now they brought out their How to Eat for Health book, and it changed. It was energy and energy out first. Then they went to food quality. Then they went to macros. Then they went to timing. Then they went to supplements. But I just like Eric's one because you can apply Eric's one to both composition and health. Health would just be you're eating everything from quality food, or mostly everything from quality food. Whereas for body comp, the order is still the same. So it's energy out, macros, micros, timing and frequency of your meals, and then supplements. And just so people understand, I'm going from the most important thing in terms of body composition, outcomes, and health to least important. So energy out is the most important. Your macronutrient breakdown, so proteins, carbs, fats, is the second most important. Your micronutrient content is your third most important. The timing and frequency is your fourth most important, and then the supplements is the least important, which is at the top. So this is off Eric's hierarchy. So there's the model I was saying about with Dan Fat. That's the model to have there in terms of nutrition. So I think if people have that fundamental principle of nutrition, then this confusion of, well, is it keto or is it vegan? Because you get to people saying, well, I lost all this body fat on paleo. And you get some going, well, I lost it on vegan and I lost it on keto. And people are like, whoa, what's going on? What do I do? And it's all if you looked at the mechanisms underneath those, it was calorie deficit, energy in, energy out. Do you know what I mean? So it's the same with strength programs. It's well, should I do 5-3-1 or should I do 5-5 or should I do West Side? It's well, as long as there's specificity, progressive overload, and recovery in there, you're gonna get stronger. As long as they're respecting those underlying principles, they're just methods, but are they meeting the principles? And it's the same now with nutrition. So that's where there's that old saying. Methods are many, but principles are few. Methods may change, but principles rarely do. So know your principles. And that goes back to what I said about knowing first principles. The more you can understand science and first principles, the more sense the world makes, and the higher your bullshit detector can go. So I think your next question was epigenetics, but do you have anything that you want to add or ask me before I go on?
Yeah, and this is slightly off topic, but I think for someone as yourself that probably is involved with plenty of projects, I think it's useful for our listeners to hear how you structure your day in order to not only fulfill your obligations, but to still make time for continuing your education. Because I hear a lot of times that I just don't have time to read about something or educate myself, so I'm just going to hire someone else, which is great because we need to hire people and help provide them with an income. But I feel like people, if they make time, like if they can just force themselves to make time, like eventually they'll find that they have more useful time throughout the day than they perceive. So how do you tend to structure your day to maximize not only fulfilling your obligations, but also educating yourself?
So first off, what I'll say is I'm single and I don't have any responsibilities outside of myself, so I can only speak to single males and females. So I don't have a family and I don't have kids, so that would obviously change a lot of things. So I just want to be upfront and transparent in that, because you can hear people say all these great things, and like you hear like a dad or a mother of a big family is hearing this from a single fella, and it's like, well, that's easy enough for him to say. Like, how's that applicable to me? Like, two completely different lives. One thing I will say though, and this is universal to anyone, time management is an important thing. Like in terms of just stress load, Dan Pfaff talks about this. Like if you are poor time management, that is something you do need to work on, because that is a big, particularly for any athletes listening. Like poor time management is a stress to your body if you feel like you're always rushing and chasing your tail, whatever. First principles again. What are your core values, and what are your priorities? And do your behaviors match up to your core values and your priorities? And if they don't, well, then you need to sit down and start to investigate why that is the case. So a lot of people don't ask, what are your core values? What do you stand for? Currently, and these have been my core values for the last period of time, health and wellness is number one. Number two is education. And number three is to help empower people to take responsibilities for their own life. Now, do I constantly meet that? No, because we are dynamic organisms that are in continual flux and are always ever-changing moment to moment. I know for a fact I violate core value number one a lot. How? I go to the gym and I still have, this, we have that fucking warrior mentality. I'm a bit tired today. Fuck it, I'm still going for it. That goes against health and wellness as a core value. But you could say for me to be in a better mind for the rest of the day, I just needed to do that. And maybe that is, healthier in one sense of the word, maybe more emotionally than physically to my body. But hopefully as I've matured and gotten wiser, I am getting better at saying, no, today I only need to do 5 sets instead of 8 here on this. Today, no, I need to just go for a walk and stretch. I'm not going to fucking gain 5 pounds of fat in 24 hours, and my strength isn't going to go. And we study this, and we know it. You know what I mean? And yet it's still, old habits are hard to kill. And that's not all it is. And that book, The Power of Habits, is fantastic. I mean, that explains a lot of why people struggle with so many areas or trying to do new things in their lives, because we're trying to overcome old ingrained habits. But the structure of my day, what I'll say is, first of all, ask yourself, what are my core values? What are my priorities? Like if I was a family man, I'm sure family would probably be up as one of my top priorities, But for me, it's health and wellness. What feeds into that then are nutrition, hydration, movement, breathing, thinking, and sleep. So Paul checks 6 areas. So I need to make sure I'm looking after those 6 areas to meet health and wellness. Education. Well, then I need to know that it's got to set some time aside every day to educate in a particular area. And then within education, I need to be very clear on what it is that I'm not going 100 to 200 different things. What is my priority right now within that? So for me right now, it is the Altus Foundation course, which I'm putting 3 hours a day in until I go back to my master's in September. Because I told myself when I was finished my master's, which was my priority before that Altus would be my priority in the summertime. and I just stick with that instead of like, well, I'm gonna do this and this and this and this. Now, if you are someone, and I do this, I do like to do this and this and this. Book that in. Say, right, this is my this and this and this hour where I'm going to go on to YouTube for 1 hour and I'm going to just float between some things. Because now you pencil that in. And when that hour is done, you're not like, oh, I did nothing today. I'm scatterbrained. It's like, no, that was a penciled in hour where I'm like, I'm going to float around here and just check out the YouTube channels and subscribe to see if there's anything good on it or something like that. That's helping your time management. So going back here to start, know your core values, know your priorities, and then build a system around that. So my system is, my day is, I wake at 6, I study for 90 minutes, I either read or I study. I either have a book going or I study. Usually I actually read for 90 minutes. I go for my morning walk, I have breakfast, I come back, I do another hour. That's usually an hour where I'll watch something. So like it might be a documentary that I'm currently watching. And then I go train. Then after training, I go to my groceries. Then I come home, I have lunch, I study. And then if I have any projects to do, like so podcast editing or podcast interviews like we're doing, that comes then. And then after that, I go to the library for 2 or 3 hours, which I'll go now after this. And then I'll walk to the library, by the way, and I'll walk home. I usually get about 2 hours of walking done a day. I'm a big walker. And then I'll have my dinner. And then wind down time for me that's when I put on the brainless stuff. So usually if it's during the day, it's education or productive stuff. So if it's any, if I have any study periods or periods where I am actually studying or reading, that's usually where it's educational type material in a particular area that I'm in. Whereas nighttime, usually that comes at 8 p.m. I'm off. I always tell everyone, after 8 p.m. you will not get me. If you send me an email, you won't get a reply till the next day. You won't get me on my phone. 8 p.m. is my cutoff time. That's my non-negotiation time. So if you are a family person, by the way, that's what I recommend. You have a non-negotiation time. Another thing is too, chunk all your emails to one time response. Say, I reply to emails between this time and this time. So you're not constantly checking it every time your phone goes off one of those, because that's just like stress. I don't know how people do that, man. That's just like bing, bing. It's just, I don't know how you can do that. And the thing is with me, and if you got to know me as well, like I'm really, like I'm all for technology, but yeah, I'm a bit of a caveman. Like I've like a phone at 6 years old. I don't have any network on my phone. Like you cannot ring or text me. I've no phone network, none. I've WhatsApp and that's it. And I don't keep the notifications on WhatsApp. Like I like things very slow, very laid back. You're much better off just getting me on email. Like that's kind of the world I live in, and I like that. That's why I like to walk everywhere too. I like things to be chilled, relaxed, parasympathetic. You get on. It's just me. I like to be nice and chilled, go about my day. Let other people do all this fucking pro sports and be stressed to the fuck, and so. But yeah, if you were to take away a principle, what I'm saying here, yeah, I'm a single guy and I don't have kids, and some people, as I said, with kids, be like, I can't take much from this guy. Well, then the principles I'll say to you is get your core values and build your day around your core values. What is the most important thing to you? How then can you structure time to make sure you're meeting your core values every day? A really, really good book on that is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. That's a fantastic book to read. Really, really good book. And he goes into depth on things like time management and things that, are just like really important in terms of how to schedule your day and stuff like that. That's a very good book. So know your priorities and build your day around your priorities. And then just make sure that your behaviors are lining up to your core values. And then if they're not, then you need to reinvestigate. Well, then, are these really my core values? And if they are, is it just I'm finding it hard to get the behaviors to meet them? More often than not, it's because the core values you have actually aren't really yours. They're not what you truly believe in, And that's a whole other rabbit field. But get core values, get clear your core values priorities, and then try and live your daily behaviors to those core values. And then you won't be going around with that sort of like, it's like most people have that lost sort of feeling in the back of their mind all day. Like, I've just felt busy today, but not productive. And people go around that, and then they kind of like sit at the end of the day and go, I kind of fucking wasted a day. And then they get angry. And then it's just kind of like, first of all, just relax. You're alive. You're alive. And you've got more days ahead, no doubt. And just be very grateful for everything you have right now. Now, listen, I always say this to Joshua. I say everything I've said now, I say as a human being who is just as flawed and who is just as fucked up as anyone listening to this. I've got my demons, man. I've done thousands of things I'm not proud of, whether it was to myself or to other people. I struggle with it every day. I'm another human on this journey, trying to just be a better person every day, trying to contribute somehow to leaving this place a little bit better. By nature, I'm a very selfish person. I'm just very Robbie orientated. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to get out of that and be a little more, trying to contribute a little bit more to community and people. And I like to think the podcast is one way I do that. Even though I did start it off purely selfishly because I just wanted to talk to people I wanted to talk to. But then when people started coming back saying, "Oh man, your podcast is great," I was like, "Yeah, it's serving people, it's serving community. That's great. I love it." But I'm just I'm just another person trying to figure all this stuff out too. But time management is huge. Try get your core values. Make sure come clear on them. And this is the key thing: your core values can change. Your priorities will change. Like if I am there to have a family, my core values will definitely change, and priorities will change. Because again, we're dynamic. It's all part of the journey. But it's just trying to line up your daily behaviors with those core values. And this is the point I was getting to. Because if you do have core values, right, you have an anchor. And if you're working towards the anchor every day, then no day will ever be wasteful. It just won't be. So if I've done some type of education today, the day wasn't a waste. If I nourished myself with good nutrition, if I drank water, if I got a good night's sleep, if I moved, if I thought deeply about something, if I practiced my breathing, even if it was one mindful breath, those 6 things fed into my first core value, which is health. The day wasn't a waste. It wasn't just busy for business. It actually was productive. So for me, and I'll finish on this. My education right now, I'm working towards a PhD. I'm finished my master's. PhD is where I want to go. Research, teach, a little bit of coaching, lots of travel. That's what I want to go. I have an anchor, and so every day I need to be like, am I getting closer to that? And if the answer is yes, then today was a productive day. And so for every day since I've come clear on that, it is a productive day. So, it's just a thing of delayed gratification too. We're so in now. We get bombarded by social media and, we all have friends and everyone shows the good. But, you gotta credit those people who do put out their demons online. And I'm always very appreciative of people that do that, So people who talk about their depression, people who talk about their failures. Because they're not easy things to do, but that stuff helps people far more than people putting out the good in their life. And that's and as well, put out the good in your life. There's nothing wrong with that. But as long as it's genuine. A lot of people are doing it to self-medicate themselves, to lie to themselves. You know what I mean? And we've all done it to a degree. I'm here in the world, look how great everything is. And I'm lucky enough and blessed enough that I've traveled a lot of places in the world, Joshua. And the more I travel, the more, and I said this on other podcasts with other people, the more I realize that the answers are here already within me. It's just about getting to a place where I can bring them out. And that's the difference between motivation and inspiration. Motivation, we can get motivated. We can watch a video there. I can watch fucking Rocky 4 there now against Dragon. I'll be motivated for an hour. But inspiration, man, lives on. And that's why it's called inspiration. It came from within to inspire yourself, first of all, and then hopefully that can transcend and resonate to other people. And that's then legacy, and that's shit then you can leave behind when you're long gone after this. And by the way, that's another thing too. Listen, none of this is going to last forever. You know what I mean? Even when I die, the world will be gone one day as well, and I'll be all gone. It's all insignificant, but enjoy it to fuck. You know what I mean? And again, I'm saying this as somebody, bud, who, when my phone stalls, I'm like, fucking go faster. And then there's that voice in your head that's like, relax, man. Relax. You're gonna die one day. None of this will matter. Just enjoy it, And I don't mean that in a real don't worry about anything. Have passion, because the fact is you are only here for so long. Dave Taney had a great thing he said to me. He says, "Take your passion very serious, but don't take yourself serious." He's like, live your vocation, love it. It'll wove it into your soul and into your skin. Now he didn't say that. That's just coming from myself. But live your vocation. Find whatever it is that just lights you up. So when people say, I don't know what I want to do with my life, the good question is, when do you feel at bliss? When is the most happiest? Generally, that'll give you an indication of something. When is it that you feel so fulfilled? Is it when you read a book? Well, then maybe it's got something to do with literature. Start going down that avenue. When you cook, maybe it's something to do with cooking. Is it when you're lifting weights? Well, then maybe it's got something to do with physical culture and looking after your body and health and wellness, whatever it is, and then live that vocation, but live it in a way that you know that it's not going to last forever, that we all fuck up, that it's all just a journey, and that if you can't control it, there's no need to worry about it, and if you can control it, there's still no need to worry about it. So just love the process. So in rambling here, but to go back to your day, get down to your core values. Know your core values will change. Priorities change because you're a dynamic organism. And ask yourself, do my behaviors align with my core values? And if they do, that's a really good starting place to understand how to organize time management. Break it down into a day then and tick off certain boxes. And again, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is a book that will help you with that.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any question or topic I could bring up that would top what you just said. And since we're coming up on time, I feel it'd be appropriate to have you on a second time, maybe a little bit later on in a week or two or a few days, whenever you have some spare time, because I do have questions I typically ask our guests, a few more topics I'd like to dive into. But that was phenomenal, man.
Well, I've 10 minutes. If there's one more, sorry, it's because I'm just long-winded as fuck.
No. Don't worry about it. I think that's a great place to stop. And I want to thank you for coming on, Robbie, and thank you for sharing your experiences and your approach to health and wellness, and also the realities of being in the field and trying to become educated on a subject. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, which a lot of people make it out to be, right? As you were saying earlier. So I'm sure the people listening will love this. And I think this, if I could sum up philosophical weightlifting, this podcast does it extremely well, right? You talk about health, wellness, lifting weights, and then you also talk about the philosophical side of just existing and being a person, interacting with other people. And it's an incredibly complex topic, and I can't wait to talk to you or talk with you about it again in a future episode.
Yeah, man, that's a beautiful way to end it, and I really appreciate you listening to me. And for anyone that listens to me, I truly appreciate it, and I'd be delighted to come on again.
Yeah, and go check out Robbie's podcast, All Things Strength and Wellness. Over 170 episodes of just incredibly high-quality content. So, Robbie, before we go part ways, is there anything else you'd like to plug besides the podcast?
No, just if anyone wants to reach out, Facebook, Robbie Bourke. My profile pic is Ron Burgundy. So it's been like, that's been the only profile pic I've ever had, because I love Anchorman. But it was funny, a friend set up the page for me, and he just was like, "Have you got to pick up?" This is long before I had any acquisition on computers, and I was like, "Man, I don't even have a fucking email." So he was like, "Right, we need to have an email before we can set up a Facebook account." So we had to do that as well. So he just put Ron Burgundy as my profile pic. So Robbie Bourke on Facebook. So Bourke is Bourke. I'm also on Twitter, Robbie Bourke as well, at Robbie Bourke. I have an Instagram account, but I'm never on it because I don't have the app on my old phone. So my phone's too old to even get an Instagram app. That's how old it is. But if anyone wants to contact me, email is my name. So it's Robbie, Robbie, Bourke, Bourkex at hotmail.com. I know Hotmail, they actually still exist, Hotmail accounts, but anyone's welcome to contact me anytime, Facebook or email or Twitter. As you can tell, I can talk.
Yeah, I'll be sure to put all of that information in the description box below. Thank you guys once again for joining us for another episode of the Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast. If you liked what you listened to, like, share, subscribe, leave a review. I know that it really helps spread the podcast, and hopefully other people can find us and listen to the great content that the guest I have put out. Robbie, any last words before we go off?
No. I've said enough.
Awesome.
So I just want to say thanks a million, and I truly appreciate it. And just for the listeners of this podcast, do Joshua a solid and subscribe and share, because it is a fantastic platform. I love all podcasters. We're all in this together, and just trying to make the world a better place.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I guess that's it. So we will catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks.